Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Well, it's a crazy week, crazy world in general. Did you see what's going on in Serbia with the the new Franz Ferdinand.
Oh, I hadn't even heard that yet. I was just
What's up,
okay.
Raf? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah, it's crazy for sure. Very condensed. Very many strange things happening on many different levels, I would say. Great revelations. Crazy stuff too. Have you already heard? I'm not even gonna mention it too detailed because I still don't know what YouTube's policies are. But the newest hype, and I'm saying hype because this has to be verified too, is that supposedly with the very popular testing they recently did, it could also have been that, at least in terms of their own science, this was an attempt to transfect the human species with some type of insect DNA. I don't even know if that's feasible or whatever, but that's like the newest type, and was like, oh, finally it's coming. Oh, and this was the one I wanted to bring up. Maybe you know this news channel called World is One News. Very nice title. They always have this very nice Indian presentresses, let's say, that sound authoritative because of their Indian English accent. And they tell you different stories, sometimes more balanced, but they also follow certain, of course, germ theory ideas and many other common tropes. And now the newest thing is there is a brain-eating bacteria, literally. And this is supposed to be the newest scare now. It's just from today, I guess. And it was like, oh, finally it's happening. People have had these crazy science fiction BS movies for decades. So now they can bring it out and actually have a presenter talking about this in a straightforward manner and then saying, yes, there's already been one victim. And they make it this big head news story where I'm like, wow, like, are people really ready to believe anything now? Yeah.
I mean, it'd be interesting because, like, a parasite that eats your brain, unless you keep going, so that your gut fauna and the parasite could use your body. That's weaponizing the human race right there. So, I mean, it could exist. It seems like a thing that I mean, and
of course, I can imagine many things, but even just here in terms of then proposing it in a way like this is now the new cyber killer thing, and it's gonna sneak up on you. There's nothing you can do except maybe if you take this particular new injection we just invented, for example. And I'm like, how silly is that when everybody knew about, I don't know, garlic, lemons, and salt or something? I'm like, what is this? It's a joke.
Yeah. And it does seem like there's a lot of ironically, like bugs will, I mean, obviously ironic, but bugs won't go towards garlic tincture for some reason. And bacteria things don't like these things. So it works. I mean, you can imagine.
Don't say that. Like.
What is it? What it works for?
It's been extracted into a medicine that's highly expensive, and maybe they create a synthesized analog that's actually.
It only works when you inject
then,
pure money into your bloodstream.
Exactly.
Right. This isn't news, but I figure Ryan's going to have something to say on this, so I'll bring it up now. Some horny teenager, Greta Thunberg, mocks Andrew Tate for small dick energy after he brags about car emissions. This is so not important at all, but it kind of was interesting to me because he became a Muslim recently. Do you know who Andrew Tate is? Do you care at all? Even a little bit? You can say no.
I have heard, no, I do care, and I have heard the name a few times, so please enlighten me.
Yeah, I'm okay. He's not really, to me, like I could care slightly less. And really, this is a rant spot for Ryan Stone, because Ryan Stone, he makes videos.
On the headlines again. I mean, she's been gone for some time. So is this
new? That's the thing. For me, I care more about.
It's like the actor is being used again. That's great economic efficiency. Like can't.
Ryan pissed off Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate pissed off Ryan Stone. I don't know how it works. I know that there's a fatwa against Ryan now by the Sharia Muslims.
What?
Yeah, and it's because he talked about how Andrew Tate was kind of lame, and now you're gonna get Greta Thunberg getting a fatwa on her probably for fighting the dude small dick Andrew. He's not a real Muslim though. He's like a fake Muslim. And as far as I thought, until this week when we started talking about this idea of Baphomet Muhammad, right? I don't know if I can. Let's do Muhammad, right? This idea that come on, internet, Knights Templar, Templar history, Templar. There we go. So there's a lot of this stuff where they're like, hey, the Baphomet worshiping of, the Templars, right? The Templars, they screamed out the name of Baphomet while they were in the process of being tortured. So, maybe they weren't being very clear, but we heard some sort of Omet kind of thing, Baphomet, Muhammad, or something like that. Seems like it could be Muhammad, right?
Exactly. And I just had another talk with David, which is going to be released soon, just right now. Of course, everything is condensed. And I actually had written down the note, like in capital letters while I was doing the research, and I was like, is Baphomet Muhammad, question mark? And then he already mentioned, and he basically said in the Quran, apparently they always say, don't call him father, which would be the whole like tata, papa, baba thing. And then it's just like Papa Ahmed. And the Papa would have been added, so the Bafa would have been added. And the Met is just from Mehmet or Emmet or Ahmed, truth. So Father Truth. And this would then mean they worship Father Truth. And also David explained something in terms of similarities between Quran and a similar word where it's not sure, does it mean book or does it mean horns? And then it would make perfect sense. You have the horned one, you know, the devil, the enemy, the nemesis, right? Of, let's say, the modern Jesuit church. And yeah, you reframe everything. Oh, and this one is in my school.
Moses,
Maybe even. Yeah,
all of the
almost.
pictures.
Like I had one of those in my school in the entrance
Right.
hall. One of those, exactly. Yeah.
Because the horned Moses, because in Europe they thought that the excuse is that horns translate to halo, and halo and horns translate back
Right.
and forth.
Right.
So.
Exactly. Yeah. But then this only represents basically the wisdom. And the other thing he explained, this is about the flower of life. I guess it's best if there's some graphical representation of this, and how basically if you have the flower of life is 19 circles, and then you just add it and make it 3-dimensional on both sides, then you would have to add 19, you know, and then 6 and then 1. And then out of the 19, which is a slice, you have 33 spheres or whatever. And this would be the relation between 19 and 33, why 19 is 33, and why both 33 and 19 are codings within the history matrix, the forged one, at least. Yeah.
Man, I mean, yeah, the 19 in the flower of life is really interesting because you look for these sequence of repeating fractal patterns and frequency. 19 kilohertz. It's another one I was looking at. I mean, I don't know if I can get you to hear the tone, but there's like something to the 19 kilohertz sine wave as well that keeps coming up. And you saw yesterday Rife came on, right?
I just saw that he was on and was like, oh, it says real Rife technology. I'm like, that's going to be something good. But I didn't listen to.
I don't know the whole, we just met the guy yesterday, so I don't know, what is what, but he seems pretty on the up and up, and he's, a relative of a nephew of Royal Rife or something to that extent. And, he builds Rife healing machines that are working with coils. So that's the other thing. So I don't know if that's how Rife machines worked originally.
Maybe you can put this in, and I hope something comes up. So this is one of the devices we have locally. This is built, I believe, by a Swiss company, and of course, even here, no, that's not it. There's maybe put the last 3 words in quotation marks, maybe, so the right type of build comes up. Otherwise, it's just going to show whatever. I basically want to show a particular build so everyone knows what I'm talking about. Maybe go on images. I didn't think this would be so difficult to find. No, it's none of those. But anyhow,
a lot of people are working on this stuff, which is actually kind of encouraging. That's like crazy how many people are trying to make this happen.
There's nothing coming up there, but this is very strange. Okay, well, maybe I'll look it up in a second.
Oh wait, maybe no doctor because it's like
oh yeah, maybe I wasn't sure how. Maybe I mentioned doctor. Sorry guys, should be better prepared.
On to search with each other.
This may at least be something. The first one may at least show that's the actual guy I want to talk about, even though that website itself may be kind of sketchy. But you just had it. So basically, that's hey, we're just there on connective. Yeah.
Wait, connective? This? No.
One back. I don't know. Real.io, and that's also gets even better. Yeah, okay. I think at least this would be the proper guy I want to talk about.
Dealing with frequencies.
Yes, okay. So at least that's the reference for the guy, and he made one of those devices, which is like a small box, and you have these applicators, which are like, I don't know, they're like sticks or something. And we actually have this device, and I also spoke to the guys who are reselling this, and they are, of course, collecting all the data from people that are using it, because, of course, it's not licensed as a medical device. You're not allowed to make any claims of anything, as we know, but just collecting information. And it seems quite encouraging that for many different things, these frequencies are working. Here, supposedly, it's supposed to be resonating with the cell's mitochondria. That is at least the explanation they give. And therefore, let's say, activating your cell's power plants. And therefore, the way I understand it, it should be generally beneficial for almost anything, let's say, yeah. Because if the citric acid cycle, which we spoke about before, is working properly, that's the device, yeah, thank you. If the citric acid cycle is working properly, there's oxygenation in the system and so on, then generally people tend to have energy and be healthy and not have any serious illness. So yeah.
Dude, I want to get that electric. What's that thing called? The argon neon electric. These things, dude. This one. This is the one I was looking at because it's got argon. Because it's the most expensive, of course, but it's got the argon and the neon. Is this just a bunch of nonsense? What do you think? Basically, it's like putting an electric neon light bulb to your face. Look how happy she looks. She looks like only happiness she gets is from shocking herself in the face with this thing.
Yeah. So the device I was showing is a bit more expensive. It's more, I think, about, I guess, $8K in dollars or something,
Okay.
depending. But still, you know, if we think about how much does one chemotherapy cost, I'm not even going to start making calculations. Even if it were only slightly beneficial in some cases, it should be everywhere, those things. And in this case, it's actually not working with any shock or anything, but it's just emitting a field that can be measured by electricians as a type of plasma or something. So there is a measurable field. And within that field, if you have it close to your skin, you can actually feel like your body from the inside kind of heating up in a way. And that is supposedly the sign that this is working and your body is generating energy, or however one could put it.
I imagine that Bernie's probably asleep right now, but this is what his ORMIS research is a lot about often, right? Monoatomic copper. So there's a lot of different metals, but the monoatomic copper, it's supposed to be useful for jumping electricity from one piece of copper through anything dirty or anything mutagent or anything radical. And so it will electrocute and clear the bloodstream, but just because there's copper one part of it and copper another part of it. And that seems like a pretty useful thing in conjunction with the charge to have extra copper, colloidal copper in your blood.
Okay, but what kind of device is this? Something to ingest or a device that you apply to your body, or similar to this shocking thing that you just
so this is ingested, right? So you just drink colloidal copper, which is a small amount of monoatomic copper, right? So
right.
parts per million, there's like 5 to 1,000 parts.
I think the difference should also be that colloidal can still be somewhat clustered, and monoatomic, it's supposed to be really separated, that it is and remains monoatomic, like with monoatomic gold.
Right. Although I think colloidal is sounds worse than it is. I think a lot of the time when you're talking about a colloid of 1,000 atoms, that sound 1,000 atoms is still a lot smaller than people realize. It's not exactly the same thing, and there's certain things that you only can use monoatomic for. Particularly, the idea of using gold to fix radical cells. I mean, this is done by reasonable medicine. They try to have the smallest kind of gold so that it can help get into the protein unfolding, and so that matters. But for the most part, if you have 1,000 pieces of copper, that's still tiny, right? It's probably more like 200 or like 60 pieces of copper or something like that. And also, things don't just stick together the way people think they do. So, but yeah, if you have monoatomic metals in your bloodstream and you have increased ampage or maybe lower ampage but higher voltage, I imagine those would work pretty well together. And I don't know exactly what we'd look to find.
Well, from what I understand, there's even like very simple graphs showing cell voltage, like cell voltage graph. I don't know And then it just shows that basically sick cells usually have a, let me say it correctly, low electric potential, and healthy cells have high electric potential, like minus 70 millivolts or something, I think, would be healthy, or maybe even more potential. And if it gets too low, then usually the cells are sick. So that's a simple electric type measurement that apparently can be applied.
Extremely low frequency electromagnetic field and wound healing implications of cytokines as biological mediators. So wound healing is highly coordinated and complex process involving various cell types, chemical mediators, and the surrounding extracellular matrix, resulting in a tightly orchestrated reestablishment of tissue integrity by specific cytokines. It consists of various dynamic processes, including a series of overlapping phases: inflammation, proliferation, epithelialization. I don't know. Someone help me with that one. And remodeling. One of the underlying mechanisms responsible for the disturbances in wound healing is an out of control inflammatory response that can cause pathological consequences such as hypertrophic scars. Okay, so recently several evaluated effects of extremely low frequency EMFs on tissue repair. So this is kind of interesting. I mean, the EMF in general, if you type in EMF into pubmed.gov, you'll find EMF treatment.
Let's just say I'm pretty sure EMF can make you sick and can also make you healthy. You know, it all depends on the quality.
It's interesting though, beyond that it's being used to youth the skin, make the skin look younger, right? That's kind of an interesting use of it. And the idea that it could be useful for keeping your DNA in a certain shape. When we think everything is just telomere, it might be we lose less telomere if we're following harmonized frequencies. So,
for sure. I mean, but this always is always only part one. I'm always thinking there's even let's see how I can show it to you in Telegram, I believe. At least there is a documentary called Urzeit Code, which is like ancestor code or something. And they're supposedly what they did is they took seeds. I believe they applied, I don't want to say something wrong now, but something along the lines of 10,000 volts or something to those seeds. And then they realized, oh, strange, the genetic code actually, from their understanding, reverted back to the original coding before any type of alterations. And to me, it just kind of makes sense that, you know, given proper voltage and proper electrical field, why not have the ability to actually download something from the quote unquote astral, you know, and recreate it here.
I mean, the idea that DNA, yeah, exactly. The idea that saline solution, EMF, that DNA could be transmitted through EMF or through light even, and absorbed in the saline solution, some sort of salt water like the ocean, so that it could be printed or vibrated into replication. Once you have it started, the crystal starts to grow, and then crystals in the bloodstream continue to grow. So just like forever replicating, because once you start the crystal, it's not like a glass. And this is something also Rife brought up yesterday, Matthew Rife, that a lot of the processes that we're seeing people use glasses that are like Reichian orgone glasses or plastic resin, which are great, but the problem is that they're great for absorbing energy. They don't grow. A crystal grows, right? Once you've started a crystal, it just keeps growing if you have the solution of materials and minerals and that it needs to feed on. It will just continue growing on the same plates, but glass won't. So there's something very important inherently about crystals and the relationship to EMF and absorbing frequencies or resonating with frequencies. This looks like Indiana Jones stuff right here. It's a that glowing rock, you know. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, like, given as much information and how popular crystals already are, it seems, at least to me, it seems we still know much too little. I mean, we know there's, you know, frequencies, healing frequencies, different transmissions, but the picture is definitely not complete yet in terms of, what can they do, what's up with these crystal skulls. Maybe they're also fakes, but whatever. You can store information in crystals. I think that's official, right? And where are the really interesting crystals laying around? Because probably also that technology is not new, so
Yeah, it's interesting. For such a long time, they tried to keep crystals out of the. I mean, it's out of the idea of. I mean, crystals are so part of sci-fi and hippie new age for some reason, but they're also just the way all clocks work for
Yeah.
everything. So it's interesting that they can have both the stigma of being pseudoscience and woo, and being also just literally the most important thing to
Your
science.
radio and your computer and your smartphone, yeah.
I don't know how it gets away with that. It's just crazy. The universal Rife universal microscope. Let's check that out again. So last night he was showing us the universal microscope, which is this crazy thing. Costs like tens of thousands of dollars in the 20s to build, and it has crystals focused right here that the energy is supposed to shine, like it refracts light through the crystal, but not just light, but EMF, but light as well. So you're getting a whatever the light goes through the crystal, whatever light comes out of it back, that resonates on what this par density, the size of the material, the minerals inside of the crystal that are growing are. And so that also tells you the resonance. I mean, I need to study it more to understand exactly why each crystal grows to certain sizes and what that does. That's the idea, that he can use the crystal in order to see what, he was using it to see viruses, bacteria, different kinds of things. But viruses are tiny, so be a good question how crystals work this way. I mean, look at the amount of sheer metal. The other thing is, it just seems like if you were trying to con people, which is the conspiracy theory on the internet, then you would do it with a lot less metal. You would use something cheaper or something. I mean, this is just so much money to build these giant telescopes, and they're still pretty commonly used for other things. Rather, I mean, they don't really use them for looking through crystals necessarily. It seems like that part's lost to some extent.
Well, that part's forbidden, probably. That's why,
Right. Also, the Rifing book. Find this. Is this it? Yeah, Allegretti. So this guy, this seems interesting. And so he talked about this book briefly, and I think this is something that we need to look into more. Different frequencies in general, because you could probably use this in music theory, right? Like if you teach a music class, you should probably put this on the required reading list. Just get the book into the hands of as many students as possible. I mean, it's not exactly about music, don't get me wrong, but it is about the connections between different frequencies, and I'm pretty sure that could be applied to music theory, and that would be very interesting to see.
100%, definitely. That's how it is, interconnection between music and healing and frequencies and EMF. It's obvious, and I'm pretty sure that's also why, from what I understand, even the power lines are tuned in a way that's not really biocompatible. And I'm just imagining, even if we are using this type of power, I'm sure we could pulse it in a way, or mobile technology, that would at the very least not be harmful to humans, aside from the idea that there would probably be superior technology too. So
John Doe says, I can't find a girlfriend with my blood type. Well, you know what? That's probably a good thing. That's probably where you need to have a, what's that called? Where you have like a agreement in marriage, prenuptial agreement that you're not going to split blood. Probably keep that stuff between each other. Looking at the frequencies, though, it's interesting. Like they've said that frequencies just 4 or 5 hertz or kilohertz off of these will, be completely different. So for instance, 432 is not that far off from 440, but 440 is supposed to be a lot different. And 417, someone was saying, Kurt said, if 432 is so great, maybe we should look into 417. Apparently 417 has healing properties as well, connected to the root chakra. So it's supposed to be good for people that have, it turned out to be an entirely true thing that people have these higher frequencies seem to have problems with their root chakra. There are other people that are hypersexual that really like subwoofers. I don't know. I'm not saying that's necessarily again a woo psych
sure.
thing. Could just be that you like having a subwoofer vibrating on your lower area. That's Occam's razor.
At very least, with subwoofers and music, you can tell with certain music and a good sound system, you can literally feel which part of your body is vibrating. This may also depend on body size and other things, but that's obvious, I think. So it's sound feeling.
People have definitely muted themselves to some of these feelings. Like they've if you drink a lot, or if you're super, you eat certain kinds of foods, probably maybe it makes you not feel certain things. And in general, it also changes probably what you like to feel. I think that's a big, like the tinny sound. People like this high pitched tinny sound. That has a lot to do with being in your head, being above your neck, not being in your gut. And then there's also the what's the name of the yellow chakra again? Manipura or whatever. This guy here. Dudes a lot, like guys will get this like huge, yellow chakra, this Manipura chakra. And it's interesting because you have the 396 and the 528, which is above and below the 432 or 440. So people get obsessed. I think people become run by their gut fauna. And it might not just be the gut. It might be also just the zone itself and the frequency that it acts on.
Yeah, probably both, because even the gut fauna would probably flourish a certain type within certain frequency field as well. This only makes sense that also bacteria potentially would thrive more within certain frequency bandwidths than others. I haven't verified this, but kind of makes sense, I guess. If we know that we can put a wireless router next to grass and it doesn't grow. So it tells you something, I guess.
That's Rife's, and Algretti, I guess, Algoretti, whatever his name is. They both are talking about different frequencies that are conducive for different kinds of life. And also what is life, right? If it's consciousness.
And also, you just basically, didn't you just show the idea that you can transmit DNA through frequency? Because this would then also give kind of the portal, or give the other part of the explanation for Caveron's biological transmutation that I spoke to you about at least a gazillion times. But also this simple idea that within the body, it's not a fixed set of cells and fungi and so on you have, but that upon observation with dark field microscopes, he actually discovered that a blood cell can dissolve and then become a fungi, and can dissolve again and become something different, always depending on its environment. And if then we have this connection with the frequency, this could maybe explain to some degree how this can happen, that it's just spawning seemingly out of nowhere. If the frequency field is appropriate to a certain thing, then probably those things would spawn, or its DNA would spawn. Could you imagine something like that? I can.
Indeed. Look at let's again with the mycelial net. Will be a good mycelial net to look at. Mycelial network. That's an interesting thought. Mycelium.
Yeah, it's pleomorphism, as Precision Barber Bear points out.
The idea of selective specialization. So in humans, we're used to having, in Animalia, having this brain at the top of the body. But if the DNA could be spread out, and this is kind of what DNA seems to have happened to it with the mushroom. It'll take it and say, hey, what are you? What is your data? It's kind of like in Tron, right? It's like the games. In Tron, they have like these games. Like, you're a rogue program. Well, you're from this former body. We're the community, we're the collective. Play against the game, you'll be gamed until we understand you, and anything valuable you have can be thrown into the collective. So that's an interesting thing about DNA because it can study it and study its sequences, and then eventually it can assimilate it. And when we talk about Native Americans eating, parts of an animal to get its strength, right? Like to get the eagle eyes or something like that. This is how mushrooms work. They're absorbing, directly. Now, maybe if it works for mushrooms, it might actually work for us, which I think is also interesting. The idea that we maybe have upgraded our DNA through assimilation. And then what are the consequences of that, right? Like in Harry Potter drinking the unicorn blood, something so evil to hurt something so pure.
I mean, that's another part of it. Yeah, I'm always thinking like this DNA evolution can be done without blood sacrifice too, but that's just my opinion. So I go with the fungi,
You can never get Rav to do a blood sacrifice. He's just
It's gonna be difficult, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I wonder a bit about that as well, the good and the evil.
Because it's here, I mean, also David mentioned this was on your talk even, or on my talk, the recent one maybe. I don't even know anymore. But David just mentioning, and this is common, in Silicon Valley, people like to exchange their blood. This has even come up in Suits or some BS sitcoms they have. This is known. And if that works and there is some integration or whatever confusion of the energies, why shouldn't it work with mushrooms or with other things? I mean,
yeah, you saw Silicon Valley, right? The blood boy. I mean, this does come up a lot. This idea of, but it's a real thing. People are getting better blood platelets this way by having the young. So there's always question there about synthetic blood. I mean, if people are able to get synthetic blood, won't this render all of the problems with because right now you're harming someone and taking blood from someone.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
exactly. I mean that, and the other thing is, can you really want to tell me that a proper diet and probably lots of fungi or something can't equally help your body, that it regenerates proper platelets by itself? So I'm pretty sure that this is like a choice to be vampiric, let's say, like a religious choice maybe, or whatever else confusion it is, and not really a scientific choice in terms of this is the best we can possibly do,
Well, so that's the other thing is aging. What's that Renaissance painting? It seems like people want to escape it. That's pretty reasonable. It happens to everybody. So there's going to be people that are trying to escape it. But it's also something that's so supernatural and just it is so terrifying. Like everybody goes through having their life taken from them. So I don't know. I mean, I wonder about the idea of immortality and that they're pushing for immortality. Everyone's always been pushing for immortality. Have they ever achieved it? Do you think it's there are just elite that are living forever, or are they just lying to themselves the whole time by drinking blood, thinking that it'll help them live forever? Or how would you do it otherwise, right?
Well, I like I said, I would start with diet. I would start with those Rife machines. I would start with like oxygen treatments or whatever it is. There's all kinds of advanced things that somehow have been thrown like to the sidelines and oh, it's strange and it's woo or something, but it oftentimes is very scientific and has a good track record. And I just always imagine having centers where all of these technologies and so on are put together, probably the proper type of water too, like highly energized and so on. And I don't see, because the body is always trying to regenerate. And this example, I think it was by Dr. Joel Wallach, and he had this chicken heart in like a solution. And the chicken is only supposed to live for however long. But he replaced the solution every day, and then the heart just lived on. And eventually it died because his assistant forgot to change the water for a few days or something. But to me, it really seems like we are inherently order-generating machines. We're not machines, but there's an order generating mechanism running on autopilot, and everyone, we are neg entropic field creating beings, so order field creating beings. Otherwise I would immediately fall apart, every cell, or however you want to put it. And then if we don't disturb that process and allow the environment, inner and outer fluids, to be clean, then I don't see why it shouldn't there shouldn't be a perfect DNA telomere reproduction, if not even download of additional information or new instruction from a potentially etheric field, or however else this connection actually looks like. So to me, it seems like a lack of interest and a lack of effort in that direction. And then I'm pretty sure this would be very superior to any kind of strange blood ritual that some elites apparently get off of.
That is, I mean, the Catholic tradition, right? So I don't know if I can find a picture of it, but
the
Jesuits kind of believe that you'll get your body back. So like your body gets
right. Mm-hmm.
Like it's this magical sequence, right, where you're healed again. Like all of a sudden, flesh turns to life again. So even if you've lost your body in cremation, I guess, but that's the thing. Rastafarians, Bob Marley, for instance, was not interested in having his toe amputated because he thought if he had amputation, it would be like castration or circumcision or something that he wasn't supposed to do beyond a certain point. I mean, I wonder. I always do. All these things make me wonder. But the idea of immortality being that you can't have a part of your body changed, isn't that like what the Jehovah's Witness?
Also seems kind of materialist to me, to be honest. Like,
right.
Important. Because the other idea would be like, in whatever way one imagines this, but one is one with a greater spirit or something, which just has many forms. And then naturally, it's just like getting into a car, and then I want to have a new car after a time, or maybe I'm even going to get a similar one, but it's not.
I love renting cars. Renting cars is
going to be the same. Yeah, renting cars is like renting cars. It's just what it is. Yeah,
the best thing to do. Never buy. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the Bible prohibits Christians from accepting blood transfusions. Their literature states that abstaining from blood means not accepting blood transfusions and not donating or storing their own blood for transfusions. The belief is based on an interpretation of Scripture that differs from other Christian denominations. It is one of the doctrines from which the Jehovah's Witnesses are best known. Jehovah's Witness literature teaches that their refusal of transfusions of whole blood or its four primary components, red cells, white cells, platelets, and plasma, is a non-negotiable religious stand, and that those who respect life as a gift from God do not try to sustain life by taking in blood, even in an emergency.
And we talked about this before, but maybe you heard this too, we can look it up. Supposedly, a lot of this would even work with the proper type of saline solution. That supposedly it's not even necessary in many cases to use that much blood. And if that is true, and also it's kind of strange, like really, like we have science, the new science for 100 years, and we couldn't come up with something, like you said, synthetic blood, or at least something that can temporarily replace it, like maybe some properly done saline solution. If that is correct, then it would of course raise the question, why do we have all these blood drives, preferably in the military, with guys just around conscription time and so on? And what is really being done? Why is that required, so much of that resource? Yeah,
given our blood, I mean, there are some differences, right? Like you can't just like salt water electricity is great, but it's not the same as iron holding oxygen, and also platelets also, which help you with hemoglobin or immunoglobulins, which is like the one I think that they're also the most interested in. That and blood. So antibodies also produced by milk. This is another one that I think is coming up a lot. I don't know. This is just too much for people. I'm afraid to even go into this. We'll have to do it another time. Social breastfeeding, though. Have you heard of social breastfeeding? Right?
Oh my God, this sounds scary. Tell me about it.
I don't even know if I can like look this up. Like it feels like such a horrible like thing to get into. I mean, basically social support and breastfeeding. Okay, imagine a world. I don't even know how to start this story. Imagine a world where nobody stops breastfeeding. Hippies, they'll tell you. Some New English people will never breastfeed. They think it's wrong. They think touching your mommy that way is bad, right? They've
really
never
got to watch Game of Thrones so I can bring up the references. Everyone else is now thinking of the veil and just breastfeeding or whatever. Game of Thrones breastfeeding.
All right, the veil
written with an A, and Brett. No, it's just about this guy, because that's like this shocking scene right in the first season where you see the 7-year-old or something on his mother, and his mother is the queen of that whatever, and then they
I'll
Game of
just have
Thrones
to.
has everything. Yeah,
So I mean, yeah, you go to California, you will find 7. You go to Oregon, you'll find like 12-year-olds probably. I don't know. I don't want to. That's not weird. That's a weird stereotype about Oregon. I'm just saying there are people that breastfeed for their whole lives now. That's not a thing that existed before, I thought, but there are people that do, and it's not from your mom. Like at a certain point, you got to let go, because otherwise, I think even hippies on the West Coast think it's like, come on. But there's a point where social breastfeeding takes over. Yeah, I know this is the weirdest possible idea, but it actually
otherwise, I
makes a
mean,
lot of sense.
biologically, generally, I would say probably by the time your mother stops producing that and you whatever, then it's probably time to let go. It's probably longer than most people do, I guess. Honestly, like probably more than a year or something. And
This is
because
a
people
social
always,
thing. I mean, humans like drinking milk for their whole lives. Cows don't. It's the difference, really. And humans have grown 3 times their normal size, also because they've adjusted, because we're so used to drinking milk all of our lives. I mean, not every human does this too. There's also lactose
do you want to
intolerant
see that
people.
we've grown because of milk?
No, that would be the American Dairy Association propaganda.
Okay, good. Okay,
But
understood. You're
But
right.
I do think the idea of taking hormones, and milk is a lot of hormones. I do think
Yeah, hormone.
that's going to affect you in some way.
Yes, and we know the story with the, how is it called? Xeno something in soy. What is it called? Xenoestrogens, right? And then I maybe mentioned this on some other show with you. Once they had this even on the most banned supposedly website, and they had showed this demonstration of supposed liberal whatever, and they just showed the floor and it was literally littered with soy Starbucks. And and you look at the people with the
God.
bloated faces and you can just tell too much of this is just not good, because it's probably bioengineered and probably honestly made to make you dumb, just like so many other things they get their
Right.
hands on, right?
Worse than that bacteria, if brain eating parasite.
Yeah, and more immediate danger, I would suggest.
Still, these dairy cows, man, like they can't do all the work forever. You can't just keep having humans drinking cow milk. No, I mean, especially when humans make their own milk. So the idea that you would have in school, kids meet and they make cliques, these groups that they hang out with each other, that they would have social breastfeeding, and that in college they would continue this trend, and that it would become part of life, that humans just breastfeed each other. And this has been studied. This is a full on, and
Sure, it's
how this
been
would
studied,
affect.
but in the last few decades, many things have been studied that may potentially be completely
Yeah, right.
insane.
Jeffrey Epstein studied a lot of stuff. Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, there are reasons why they were studying this, because it shows that there are antibodies that are produced that aren't produced other way. Human milk produces antibodies in a better way. I mean, mushrooms are probably the best.
Oh yeah, but even here, what does antibody mean exactly? Here, I'm also a bit wary when people start talking about this. Like, what does that mean exactly? And is it just a reaction of my body that's actually fending something off naturally, or is it something I really need extra? Because that's something I'm not so certain of in all cases. You see what I'm saying? Like, is the
I mean,
antibody just a natural detox reaction? And then the science says, oh, this is what you need a lot of. That was kind of my impression during the last 2 years. But
shameful. I don't really get the reference here, but that's the weirdest stereotype about Arizona. If you think that the Phoenix Mall has social breastfeeding in 2022, like update us, but I don't think that's there yet. I don't know, but the idea of breast milk is it's supposed to have antibodies, right? Like in general, it's supposed to, humans protect their young by producing the antibodies for them. And there are like episodes of Dr. House where the best antibodies are found through human breast milk. So, I mean, I think it's a natural mechanism.
Because hasn't there recently rather been an agenda pushed that no one breastfeeds? I'm a bit confused now.
Yeah, and again, a couple hundred years ago, there was one again. So it feels like this is a reset thing. But there was also, it depends on where you go. People like are all about it on the West Coast. People on the East Coast aren't. I remember being in a child psychology class where there were students that were yelling at each other because some people thought it was, super important to not breastfeed and to not soothe the baby. You have to leave the baby in the other room.
Nice.
And they're like, that's how I was raised, etc. And then other people that were like, that's friggin' nuts. And I was kind of erring on the side of, don't leave the baby in the friggin' other room. I mean, I get that you're trying to teach him a lesson, but like, that's friggin' psychotic. It's a baby, Don't teach babies lessons. Make sure that they're alive, as I err on that side.
Yeah.
But like, oh, it's gonna become weak. It's like, you're literally the descendant of reptile spawn. And I mean that as a compliment. But like, if you believe that your child
at least in some books, but who knows, in retrospect, this was even the policy in Germany 1930s, supposedly.
Oh, it's
leave the child and make him this strong soldier or something.
Same, but I don't know. See, because that's what it's like in America. That's what New English people are like.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say anything more. Operation Paperclip.
Yeah,
the rest I'll leave to you.
But I mean, it's poor. This is rich and poor. Actually, it doesn't really matter. But just people in the East Coast, and there are a lot of New English that were taught this idea of lack in affection was better for you. And then you've got people pointing that out. You've got saying, hey, look in California, they're breastfeeding till 12. Not everybody, but the ones who do, they make a documentary on it. And then so everyone's freaked out. They're like, whoa, California is crazy. Where's the middle? And there's no middle. That California was the middle. Now you're talking about for a lifetime. So, I mean, you just have to expect that the world's going to change. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure the world's going to change in many different ways. I'm just not sure. Or let's say, if all of those fantasies manifest in that mass scale as some people imagine it. But there will be many pockets, many different realities. I'm sure of that, as they already are. Probably going to get more extreme. Of course, here the interesting thing about the antibodies is with the whole Asian population, right? So-called Asian, and why they can't handle it, and only maybe because we're so used to it after a few generations or something. But
that men can breastfeed, right?
Everyone except Europeans are lactose intolerant anyhow, no?
The answer is yes and no. Under certain unusual circumstances, men are able to lactate. Yeah. So, fun fact, we could be living in
circumstances with like artificial boobs or something. I'm sure.
No. Like, let's say you're a caveman and your wife gets killed by a brontosaurus in that movie. Whatever. Like, you're gonna have to breastfeed. Yeah, they're in survival in nature. Sometimes men might have to be the only one left. In some weird.
Do we have one current documented case of this?
I'm sure that the Russians, the Germans, the Chinese,
someone wrote
the
Americans, paper. I'm not talking about genetically altered underground lab poor individuals. Or something.
Well, maybe not genetically altered, but underground. Can they still be underground? They have to be.
Of course, they're underground.
Yeah, like, you want people to see this guy? Like, this is Arnold Schwarzenegger feeding Danny DeVito through his chest right now. That's not really what most Americans are probably down. I don't know. Sorry, that was a deterrent from the antibodies. We're going back to antigen binding sites. This is what an antibody looks like. So, antigens, antibody. Let's look on antigen. Antigen is a molecular structure or any foreign particulate matter or a pollen grain that can bind to a specific antibody or T cell receptor. The presence of an antigen in the body may trigger an immune response. The term antigen originally referred to a substance that is in an antibody generator. Antigens can be proteins, peptides.
Okay, now I know what I want to say because I really don't know enough to be, in any way, shape, or form authoritative on this. But just in terms of the basic understanding, because you mentioned, I was trying to fit it together. Okay, you get the antibodies through the milk and so on. And of course, the other version of this explanation would simply be you get the proper bacteria, you get the proper biome. And of course, you can kind of transfuse it from your mother. And I think that would be the other idea, that it's not about specific antibodies against or for whatever, but it's about creating a proper ecosystem within your own body. And this is, of course, something through the placenta and many other things would happen naturally and through the breast milk. So just to point out the two perspectives on this, but please go on, because I'm sure we're not going to see that on Wikipedia anywhere. So
actually, that's kind of my point. It's like compiling from source. When you make a computer app, if you take the code and you say, hey, these are the parts of my computer, build it as an app to run just for my computer. It'll run better and more quickly without any bugs if you compile it from source. If you just say, hey, make a generalization, make a medicine that works for everybody, it's not going to work as well.
Exactly. It's a fun analogy, but you're right. It works with computers too, but I never had the patience to go with Gen 2. Have you?
I suck at it, actually, but I know I do compile it from source.
I was also compiled some things I also compiled, but only where there was no binary already.
Yeah, I'll do it with a Mac a lot of the time still, because when I first started using OS 10 beta, 2000, was it 1999? Like you had to, right? Mac OS 10 beta.
Yeah, and just bring it back to grain association. Cody Wee says that's why all the formula-fed kids have poor immune systems, many allergies, etc. Yeah, and also probably because of heavy metal. What is a nice way to put it? Not poisoning, but heavy metal uncleanliness in the products and so on. Yeah, or the Kellogg's metals, you know, so you don't masturbate.
I'm still confused about the Jehovah's Witness thing, because it's like everybody makes the Jehovah's Witness seem like the craziest ones, which to me makes them sound like the most right, probably. But at the same time, I'm not convinced that they are. I'm just saying, I mean, I'm not. I'm just also saying, weird. All the things that they're doing do seem to make sense. Trying to be careful about becoming a vampire.
I mean, from what I heard, the few stories or related to different sects is oftentimes, unfortunately, not the very good story, but maybe that's also because bad stories more easily get told. But I'm pretty sure that they also get put in a crazy corner, because every religion or whatever must almost contain something that's really valuable. And we know very little about blood. There is no official explanation for the blood types and all that mystery. And we spoke about it before, the positive, negative. What does it mean exactly? Why are the differences there? Why a certain blood incompatible and so on? At least, I mean, I've heard some decent explanations, but officially it's not clear. So that just to me tells us that there's a lot behind blood that's being hidden and is deliberately being obfuscated and held in a amorphous, confused state. So probably there's a lot more power and energy behind it. And I could well imagine that there's some kind of a connection to whatever idea of a spirit, or also just interface to one higher realm. And maybe it would sense why I wouldn't want to, let's say, mix my own transmission fluid, let's say, with someone else's, unless maybe I'm going to receive part of their signal or something. I don't know.
Dude. But yeah, don't trust them. Have you ever see that movie Osmosis Jones?
No, it sounds fun.
Oh, it's pretty good. Yeah, right. It's all about blood cells. It's like white blood. He's a white blood cell. He's, who plays him? It's like Chris Rock or something like that. But they go through the body and they have to fight, all the parasites that have been living in the body for years. It's like a corrupt body and it's about to break down. The whole city's about to go. But the only one who can save the body is Osmosis Jones, and he's one cell of a guy. So clearly this is just like a science movie. I don't know. You probably, if you're like a junior high school science teacher, you would have loved this movie. But I think it's I think it's pretty good. I don't know. It's also Bill Maher. Bill Murray. Sorry. Bill Murray. Sick because he ate something off the ground at the zoo. But blood cells, what are platelets? Platelets, the smallest.
Something you can go on the science talk, of course. I have something related in terms of comics and science comics. You can enter in what I just wrote there. This is a whole series. I think it was French produced, very popular, I guess, in France and German speaking regions. And there also you have this kind of story. I thought it pretty interesting, but it's also obvious that, of course, it's a type of programming they show little children as to imagine how it works, obviously.
With even freaking Saturn, yeah.
I think there's even some nice aspects about it, or, I would have to rewatch to really make a proper agenda analysis and, see all the occult symbolism in it. That could be fun. But just saying that there's something very equally popular in I wanted to say Arabia, but Europa, yeah.
Arabia, that's fair. Oh man, I mean, I have to watch this as well. I love these French cartoons. Good. The journey to this. What's the Okay, so there's a couple of things that are worth watching. Hemo, the Magnificent, which is on the channel. Actually, you can watch this on the Xirtus channel, but it is a Bell Science Labs video from Frank Capra, the creator of It's a Wonderful Life. He talks about blood, like hemoglobin, as this sort of god or this mythological character that's friends with all of the cartoon animals, and then they show how blood works in the body back in the 40s or 50s. It has a very Catholic Jesuit intonation, but it shows you all the science of the similarities between blood and seawater, and the kind of pseudoscience that we believe in. You know what I mean? Like things that they don't accept anymore because they're too magical and mystical, but that are clearly true, right? That's a good one. And then what's the one? Inner Space? Inner Space with Meg Ryan, Martin Short, and Bill Paxton. Is that right? Where they go into the body. Bill Paxton? I forget if that's Bill. That's not Bill Paxton. Who's that guy?
I've seen this trope many times in different series, but I've never seen this movie.
I always think about this poster because I'm like, dude, this is not what Martin Short looks like, and they made Meg Ryan into the Joker. Like she's Jack Nicholson as the Joker. It's terrifying. It's freaking. And he looks too. Like he looks like he's evil. Like he's straight up possessed on acid. Like this is about more than this is messed up. I don't know, but it's a great movie. The trope is all based on this movie. He gets shrunk by the military corporation, put into a human body, makes his girlfriend pregnant. It's a whole amazing thing, but it's also based on itself. Another movie, Journey. What's it based on? Fantastic Voyage, I think. Is that the right one? Yeah, Fantastic Voyage, where they go inside of a human body, and people are. It's a space movie in the human body. That's like the original one, and I think that they've also done this sort of thing with NASA, where they say, okay, this is what space looks like. This is what your body looks like, and most of the time, we still believe what Fantastic Voyage said. Blood platelets are these
exactly. That's what I want to say. Like, how many things are there in life everyone can ask themselves that you've only heard as a child? Everyone just generally says, "There's nothing we talk about so much. Is nothing so interesting, or it's a bit complicated, or don't you already know? Haven't you already gotten the programming as a child?" And then everyone just continues agreeing. And yeah, but probably the model is wrong, and probably it's done by some Jesuits. Sorry to say.
Yeah, I feel bad for the Jesuits because the Jesuits do put out some of the truth. A lot of the time.
I'm also like, I want to talk to some nice, not history obfuscating Jesuit. I haven't found them yet, but I would be very happy to talk to them.
You got to visit a Californian university. Like they're all over the place. Like come visit. We'll go with Jim, and we'll be like, what's a Jesuit? And they'll be super nice. You have no idea. I mean, Jesuits are always like the nicest dudes that you've never met. They're like the most influential people that you don't hear about. That's all it is,
Yeah.
Even that as a conspiracy.
Really all it is.
It's kind of a conspiracy, but a lot of time it's just like nobody cares. They're like, oh, this is like an old man who isn't married, and he fought in Africa, and like yeah, basically. Like it's there, you could find out, just nobody cares. Like I wish people cared.
It's hidden in plain sight. Works pretty well.
The thing though with these things, for instance, like the blood plates, that really gets me. The idea that blood is this way, or this is that monadicism again. The idea that everything comes down to these units, this one-sized units.
Yeah. Like an atom in the model, or how do you call it? A proton.
Right. Well, I mean, you look at the picture of in a SEM, and it does kind of seem like that, right? Like you've got this, this is a lump in some ways when you look at a scanning electron microscope. Here's a couple pictures of them. So you
but which one of those? It already says fine art. Which one of those are real images, and not CGI?
These are
sorry to say, but
these are kind of what you get if you look at a SEM. Like if you look at blood through a SEM, it does look like that. But then if you look, inside of it, it's like AFM.
This is actually a huge topic now with the recent quote unquote treatments. This has been well proven that it creates issues in the blood coagulation and those things actually sticking together, which is one of the reasons why many people now experiencing issues, because the blood doesn't coagulate properly or too much or something. And then you get it stuck together and you have these rolls kind of, you can see it on the microscope. So yeah, it's a big topic right now, actually.
Resting and stretched. Here you go. Here you go. So like, look at this. So once you start to like look at the netting though, and you can see this is why it's not really what we think it is, because it's just so tightly knit. I mean, it's you could take a sponge and do the same thing to a sponge, but a sponge isn't really knit per se. But it's essentially knit together, woven, and it's knit by iron. So,
Oh, of course. This was the other thing I wanted to bring up. Isn't it true that there is only, at least in the official model, one element difference between the blood of humans and, I want to say, chlorophyll or something, like copper or iron?
there's a couple
making this
things
up?
about the shape too. Like the cell wall is different in chlorophyll, but the hemoglobin isn't really solid, right? This is the netting. The blood cells made up of this noodly path. So we're constantly doing this. We're like, oh, it's this solid thing, but it's not a solid thing. And it's made up of this spaghetti that is tied together, but it's not even really tied together because it could easily unravel, and it unravels all the time. And it does this in order to be digested and make new protein. So I mean, it's also digested in amino acid. So blood is not what people think it is. And I think that's a constant problem here. We're constantly like, okay, look at this guy.
Definitely, yeah.
And that's what you get when you have this. But it's not, it's more, there's more to it than that.
It's just like with the, is it Boson or however it's called, the most famous atomic model, which looks like a surprise NASA planetary CGI system.
And then the Higgs boson, or which one? The boson?
No, the basically atomic model. The atomic model is just no. This is already too advanced.
Boyle.
Boyle sounds good. Boyle sounds good. Yeah, I think he was the guy who invented this model, which is obviously just a gross simplification, but because I guess it's just this image where you have the thing at the center and the other thing supposedly spinning around, but they are mainly being looked at as particles that are spinning super fast when actually, it's a field. And even here, yeah, I don't want to make any statements because it's not my field of expertise, but
I mean, I do think it's interesting though. You've got these guys who are like, well, maybe the pentagram was for this. I think that's what they're doing at this period in history. They're looking at these old drawings of esoteric stuff and they're like, I know it means something. What does it mean? Maybe the different points on the star represent how many electrons it is. I don't know. I feel like that's really what's going on. They're just trying to come up with excuses for esoteric stuff to make sense.
I want to say they're trying to come up with excuses for the Arabic scripts they found to make sense, or
right. We just call it esoterics, but yeah. Arabic books from bazaars, Arabic alchemy. Even the idea of like what is Arabia too, because it seems like you're looking east and west for something that's just full on not on the same continent, right? You got lost continents. Did you see Mr. Beast was in Antarctica recently?
The tourist part?
No, I mean, so Mr. Beast, Antarctica.
Oh, I think I saw him on your show, but I didn't catch that part.
Sweet. This dude, Mr. Beast Jimmy, who he's pretty famous. Nick is now working with him as an editor or something, but he's got like a bunch of money, and the fact that his name is Mr. Beast, you gotta wonder about that. But he seems like a nice guy, as far as I can tell, for a dude named Mr. Beast, right? But he went to Antarctica. He partnered with NASA. He's done everything.
Good.
He's gonna take over Twitter for Elon Musk, right? That's the headline. But he went to Antarctica and they named a mountain or a volcano. They went and they climbed a volcano that no one's ever climbed before. And they did it for a sponsor.
And I'm sorry, but just very simple statement. How do you get there without government clearance?
Oh, it's all government clearance and Google and NASA.
Yeah. So that tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it?
And he's got so much money, and they can't poop, and they have to like save everything in jars to leave Antarctica, right? Because it's like you go in, you bring everything out. Like it's worse than it's like Burning Man, right? It's technically
Yeah,
Burning Man.
only if it's overground. If you build an underground base, no problem, you know? Like with the Fitbit story, you know that, right?
The Fitbit story is great. Yeah. Show that just to remind people. Do you guys remember that time that Fitbit found secret bases around Antarctica and a ring structure, right? And this was pretty good. I don't know if they're gonna. Where do I have to go to get the pictures of it? There we go. Good remember. Good. Oh, come on. They don't want you to see this. Really? That bad? Particle accelerator, portal gateway with enormous magnetic field generator. Hee, but that sea is freaking strange. They weren't jogging around them. So what about the pyramids and the UFO underneath the ice? Yeah, I love it. At least we get that. But there were a lot of military Fitbits. So and then guys from NASA with Fitbits, so they could track where they were. So that was pretty rad. All disappeared information. That's really sad. They don't want you to see what's going on. Anyway, Shopify pays for the trip, at least for this part of it. They climb a volcano that has no name. They name it Mount Shopify. So,
oh my God. I mean, really. Wow. At least come up with some occult something like, I don't know.
Shopify probably does mean something like occult. We haven't even really looked into.
It probably does, but still, it sounds very lame.
Well, there's a couple things there. So, Scopa, Couched, Scopen, small additional structure, shed, a shop, booth, stall. So they're going to start installing stalls across Antarctica, maybe. Like this has to do with the beginning of building buildings in Antarctica. I don't know. Maybe that's too much of a stretch. Talk shop, shopping around. Also just the symbol, right? And the barber shop. I don't know. But the symbol of Shopify is this the $, which is that we've gotten rid of the rune. So it's just this S on a box. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. It just seems so weird though. Like, who the hell are these people that they want to own a volcano in Antarctica or like have their name on it and have people remember it? Canadian.
Maybe look at the owners of this company or something, if there's some, or which hedge fund. I mean, it's probably Vanguard and BlackRock as usual. But
Tobias Toby Lütke, born in Koblenz, in Germany. By age 11, he began rewriting code. I don't know. Maybe he's a decent guy. What do I? This is the thing. When I look into Mr. Beast, he seems like a decent guy too on Wikipedia. So, what do I know? Probably is a decent guy. Presented the Meritorious Service Cross.
Like Queen Elizabeth is the most respected individual on the planet, you know?
He was presented the Meritorious Service Cross, right? So that's obviously...
It's not getting better, I'm sorry.
That sticks out. Like, they're like, no, he's a good guy. How good of we got the Queen to present. Wait, why did the Queen present you? Like, you know, that at that level, you're too good of a guy. You're so good.
So we have the Queen connection, actually, of course, because it has to be. This is also. I mean, there was only one Queen. I mean, for Europe, so yeah, and America.
So, guy gets a Canadian Forces awarded action performed in an outstanding manner that brings great benefit or honor to the Canadian Forces. Presented by the Monarch of Canada, aka the Queen.
And who got this exactly?
This is the Shopify guy from Germany, Tobias Lütke. I don't know, man. It just seems a little weird. Like we're supposed to know more about this guy than we do. But maybe not. Maybe he's completely chill. Like Shopify send me money, but I just don't know, man. Something seems really strange about it to me. They have a volcano now, and they call it Shopify. I mean, that's a very German thing. See, like that makes more sense now that he's like so excited about it because he's like
scroll down so I can see the lower part, just whatever else it says while you're talking. I want to see. Scott Lake. They launched Snow Devil.
It's a
See, it's
very
already,
cool
at least
name.
there's a connection with the Mr. Beast.
Mr.
While,
Beast.
while it, and this was the other thing I wanted to ask: how many Satanists or Luciferians do you think know that Baphomet maybe actually means Baba Ahmed or Mohammed or something? You know,
Dude, a lot
like,
more.
this
A
would
lot more.
totally trip them off. I think if they're like, "Oh, we're worshiping the devil," but actually it's just the old Quranic God. Like, what a joke.
I'm pretty sure that wouldn't freak out nearly as many of them as you think. Have you ever seen like Ashton Kutcher's Kabbalah group in LA? Like, I'm pretty sure that they're on that wave. They're pretty familiar.
I'm
And
not sure how far you actually let them, because I'm pretty sure they create 100 of these circles where they tell you, obviously, oh, we're giving you the big information, take this red thing, just like with Madonna, there was the huge thing 20 years ago or something. Exactly, yeah. And now we're telling you the secret. I don't think they're really getting told anything, honestly.
I mean, it goes deeper though. That's the thing. I'll have to talk to David about it. But from my understanding, Baphomet, white Baphomet, has to do with the feminine aspects also of Muhammad, because there's also Miguel Sereno Allah. Let's see if I can find that book. This freaking kind of scary guy, right? Who was a Chilean diplomat and friend of Carl Jung and Freud, and he's got some books back and forth between them, right? And he was into Abraxas, but he thought Hitler was the Vedic avatar of Vishnu. I think if you live in Chile and you're isolated from the world, you might have like a completely different perspective on what's going on than other Europeans who don't have Platano. But he wrote, what was the thing? Oh yeah, Allah. Where's the Allah? Is that gonna come up? They just don't never. They're just keeping me down, man. Where's the book? Yeah, show it to me. There it is. Okay, so he's got this book called El Aya, right? And it's the idea of Allah is he, she, and the combining forces of magic for the feminine and the masculine, and that together they create the alchemical process, which is the over unity that produces more energy. And it's tapping into,
I mean,
the
I
virile
would say
energy.
that's perfectly clear and obvious also through the Taoists and so on. And that's why sexual relations between humans is the most attacked and programmed thing that there is. I mean, if anything creates over unity, I'm certainly that's one thing that it is, and also opens some kind of etheric manifestation space and who knows what other things. So yeah, that's why it has to be controlled by the church. So yeah.
I mean, in the state, right? So that's the thing about sex magic also producing children, is that we use them in war, right? So we've got the baby boom is this creation of children. Literally every time you've got men that are disappeared, so there's more women desperately trying to have children, right? And that's a big part of it as well. If there's a majority of women, then there's more kids because they can suit. But there's also less men in a generation of equals that have children. So then that's when you have a religious order of celibates or whatever's going on with the non-child bearers. So the idea of a community built on this, you kill a bunch of people, you have a bunch of babies, then you use those babies, you can send them to war as well, because there's just
which is just another huge blood sacrifice for nothing.
Right. Well, maybe not for nothing, maybe because that's like Full Metal Alchemist.
For power, of course, for power and whatever, crazy religious goals.
Did you watch Full Metal Alchemist? Do you remember they have like a map, right?
I never really watched it. I just started and I couldn't jive with it yet. Please explain.
So basically, you've got let's try to go like a little bit. Full Metal Alchemist is about the Nazis and the communists and the Tartarians. I forget the names of all the groups of them, but you've got these two brothers, right, that are kind of the Hyperborean, and then the younger brother loses his body because like they're trying to do a ritual to get the mom back, and in the process they didn't have enough for the ritual, and so they lose an arm and a leg, right? But he loses his arm and his brother's whole body, and so his brother's stuck in a metal suit of armor until they can get his brother and his body and his arm back through some Full Metal Alchemy, right? You got that there, right? Yeah, there you go. And he's got the white glove. There's some Michael Jackson references to the alchemy there as well, and how you can destroy yourself is an important thing. Very good book. Amazing cartoon. There's several versions of it, but the thing is, it takes place in this sort of para history where there are, what are the names of the groups? I think it says it on the map, probably, right? Does it, or will it? Nations.
Looks
It's
pretty
kinda
cool. I think I gotta start watching it now. So it definitely has this political and historical dimensions, as most of those things have, I guess. I'm thinking
yeah,
of Attack on Titan as always, because there it's so crazy, but yeah.
got the Attack on Titan kind of nation thing going on for it. I forget the names of them. I wish we had Nathan Amoro here to remind me. But you've got Slavs, you've got these blonde people, you've got these different groups, and what they end up doing is there's a correlation between Hitler where you have 5 or so camps, and the camps are being used to kill exactly a certain number of innocent people. And they're precisely these distances from each other in a pentagon, with an inverted pentagon in the center, with a strategically centric point that is where the philosopher's stone is being created and charged from the sacrifices of the 5 or 6, I think it's 6 million, because there's the center point, right? So there's a really interesting connection in Full Metal Alchemist to why the Holocaust is about alchemy and about immortality. And that's something I don't see a lot of people kind of like fighting about in the Full Metal Alchemist. I'm always surprised that that's something that the Japanese were allowed to talk about, and no one's really censored them yet. I hope I don't start a bad trend, but it's a really weird part of the show. Like, it's a very strange thing to make the show about, and it's always, you're looking at the Japanese anime going, why do you guys know so much about the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Thelemites?
Even reset history, and again, like just like with Frank Herbert's Dune, when I look at it now, I'm like, with all this alternative history arabesque, let's say, or even Shingeki no Kyojin, Attack on Titan, this idea that you are, it's time to discover the world. You've been kept on an artificial island. You've been told it's, everyone who knows it, it's a good analogy that there are all these man-eating giants if you try to explore for yourself. And then if you actually do it, you realize, the story is even 2 levels bigger in a sense than you were ever supposed to be able to imagine, let's put it this way, or you were ever programmed to be able to imagine. But yeah.
Yeah, I wish we, could get David in you at the same time so we can talk about Beetlejuice and Dune, because there's some kind of a connection there with Sirius A and Sirius B and Dune, and why at the beginning of Beetlejuice they see the Dune snake. But we're definitely living in a world where they've, Arab, Europe, we clearly have taken the same world and set it backwards and divided it in half. And we've got these ideas like they're so different. Arab and Europe are completely different places, and we're just living in the, we're living in this kind of dark crystal, broken crystal kind of reality, right? In the dark crystal, where they've got this like shattered crystal. And so the Skeksis and what are the names of the good guys again? Like the big nose guys here. What's his name?
I don't even know. I can just again recommend also the new series. It's actually well done. I was really surprised how archetypically, at least to me, it really made sense. And I was like, this is programmed on a high level. And at least the basic story to me seemed not to have any complete BS elements inserted. So it seemed to check out from my understanding, how they
I remember that the baby, right? Like the baby in the Dark Crystal grew up to be, the set designer, right? As one of the stories. So imagine if you grew up with Dark Crystal as your earliest memory. Like, the only way you could get better and sleep at night probably would be to psychologically process that by physically making another Dark Crystal. And probably a lot of them, like 12 episodes. But I mean, they canceled it, so that usually bodes well. That means it's probably pretty good, right? They don't have any more episodes after a few seasons. I have not seen more than like 10 minutes of the first episode. What was it about? Was it, you said it was
it's I think it just recounts the story of the main movie overall. To me, it was funny because I know I had seen this old movie as a child somewhere, but I never knew what it's about. I just, had this impression of these masks. So it was nice to actually watch it. And I guess what's most interesting about it is it kind of explains the issue of the Skeksis. I actually put this in one of my short video compilations on my channel. This idea that they feel like they've fallen off from source or are separated from source. All they remember is pain and torment. Because of that separation, they say we were rent asunder. So some kind of a fragmentation of consciousness, technically speaking. Other maybe would say it's the third, the legion that's turned against God or something. Let's just call it fragmentation of consciousness.
Yeah.
And then, but because of that, they say, oh, all remember is pain because of this. So we will hold on to this life with all claws because we don't know what terror lies beyond this existence, And I somehow have the impression this is the general, I want to say, psychological damage or misunderstanding that many of the supposed elites have. And that's why there is this drive for physicalized immortality, even though I'm the first one to say we could probably all easily live 200-300 years very healthy without needing to eat anyone else. Yeah, but that's another thing. So, but I think that's the issue, that, or maybe that even there is some kind of a, I don't even think there's retribution, balancing or something, and maybe just resetting that may be experienced, maybe even on a soul level, as somewhat painful, which could be another reason why people that supposedly do evil deeds, maybe then just have to re-experience it from the other point of view when they're dying or something. Maybe they just want to avoid the after movie, so they're trying to, push the credits ever forward or something. I don't know exactly, but at least this basic sentiment, I think, is well represented. And of course, this whole idea of harvesting the life force energy
Right.
of the population, and how? By programming them, so by mind controlling them and making it appear as if they are serving them, but actually they are just siphoning off their energy and putting a nice veneer. And that's the perfect analogy for, unfortunately, most of the big so-called authoritative systems of whatever kind that we can perceive right now, as the veil is thinning, finally, luckily. Thanks to all of you guys watching, and you, of course, Andreas.
Dude, this movie definitely made me not want to do crystal meth. I remember as a kid thinking just like there's some sort of a metaphor here,
I never made the connection, but
I mean, it might have been because I was so close to LA or something like that. But I was just like, there's clearly, because they make the little girl or whatever it is suck on her eyes. The crystal just pulls energy right out of her face. It's just, I don't know. It's a horrible memory of at 4 or 5 years old to have her life force sucked out of her face through this crystal. And so it is kind of, what is that? Like a Rife cannon backwards or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And the Skeksis also, because they're just like, I am still Emperor. Like very, very scary bird-like characters. With the original version of the movie, Jim Henson had to buy it back from the production company because they were so upset that they'd made it. They're like, this is so scary and weird, and we didn't want to do this. And so he bought it before they could release it. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff with Jim Henson and Cube, right? Like the movie he made. I always wonder about Jim Henson because
but that's another interesting point, because this is the other reference to the whole, what I just spoke about with David, to the whole Kab Allah and Kab Allah. So just I think the book, of God, and the idea that the cube is just a reference for the knowledge of God. That's the basic thing. And when people then are supposed to be confused about the idea of Kabbalah and that cube and so on, but the cube is just a reference to the book, and the book is just a reference to the knowledge of God, or let's say to the adherence of natural human moral principles, to anyone that's somewhat sane, I guess.
Hermetic, Keck, the whole thing. The connections that he has. It's funny when I first started digging into the rabbit hole of like how weird, and I already, the Muppets were weird, and that was awesome. But by the time this, the Dark Hermit meme came out, right? You guys remember this?
No, this one,
So this was so in my face because it's just kind of funny. You're like, okay, big deal, like whatever. But this happened, and then people were so upset about Pepe, and they tried to ban Pepe, and then Pepe started just kind of emerging everywhere, and all of a sudden you recognize like the liberals were using Pepe without realizing they were using Pepe because they were using the dark frog, and it was just I remember thinking, okay, what is the deal with the frog and Thoth and all of the different symbols, and Jim Henson, which I could find like 1969 or something like that, but if you watch some of his earliest movies, like they are beyond psychedelic, like they're crazy surreal masterpieces. And his connections to Britain, right, his connections to Tavistock, I mean the guy was clearly into magic. So I don't know if that makes him bad though. I mean that sounds pretty great, like that he was into magic. We're all kind of into magic, and a guy who was into magic and puppets, you're gonna have to decide for yourself if you want that guy in your kids. Yeah, I mean, but the thing with the puppets is that way Disney, or any company that he was working with at the time, the puppets were like people. So he would own the character. After the commercial, he would get to use that puppet on another commercial he owned. They didn't get to keep the puppets, right? Like that would be crazy in a movie. You're in a movie and then they own you afterwards, right? Like they get to keep you, right? Wouldn't it be? I don't know.
Well, got to look at some of those contracts.
Yeah. Also, just like how demented like Sesame Street started out as, right? Because it was originally
its origins. I just know it's been so supremely popular. I never really watched it. I just know of some of the memes or the ideas, and I always thought that this pig woman was really strange. That's the one thing
I mean,
she looks like really
I'm afraid to comment on Miss Piggy for a lot of reasons, but I'm a supporter of the imagery, but I think that might offend people. Why? I think it's important. I think it's real. I guess I just want to say it like that. I think it's really important that men see themselves as potentially emasculated Kermits. That was a thing that was a scary potential, that the alpha would be Kermit, and he's this high-strung New Englishman who's like forcing people to do this show. I mean, there's something kind of wrong with Kermit and his love and infatuation.
It's the basic idea that he's forcing them.
Not really necessary, but he's the one who holds it all. He holds it all together. He has to hold it all together, and it's because he's a nebbish. It's the only reason. Because if he was any more alpha, like the rest of the puppets that are out of control, it wouldn't work. Miss Piggy needs to make him run things, right? Because she needs the most powerful man, so she's making him more powerful, and he's got this weird obsession with Miss Piggy, which is unhealthy. Clearly, I mean, it feels like David's thoughts on Married with Children and The Feet, but I'm pretty sure that there's a reason why he's obsessed with Miss Piggy. But maybe that's reasonable because there's more motion in the. I don't know. There's a lot going on.
Out just very superficial, but that's the only overtly, apparently female character there.
No, in this one scene here, there are definitely more. There are female characters. I think the problem. I think the problem with that is that the Muppets,
not the Grinch, but this other movie where they're not allowed to touch the water at night or something, and then the nice fairies turn into the evil. I'm not sure what their names is anymore, but okay.
But is this evil? Oh my god!
When the evil, I mean, can it survive on its own? Is maybe the question I'd ask.
I don't know if
can it integrate well into the ecosystem.
Wouldn't you rush to take care of something like this? It's adorable. I don't know, but the Muppets aren't originally supposed to. I mean, they're not originally supposed to be just one kind of person. You've got every puppeteer that came into that, they would do their characters. And so there were more and more female puppeteers, but it started out with just him. And so he created a bunch of male characters. And so as time went on, you'd have more female characters. But the fact that he, I think, did Miss Piggy originally. Oh, I'm Miss Piggy, right? Like that's until Oz did the Piggy and what's the other one? Gonzo and then Yoda, right? Yoda's done by one of the puppeteers, Oz's. So all of these characters had to be related to the person that played them, and that's why all the puppets today are kind of falling apart. But originally they were super dark, right? Like so, Big Bird had an imaginary friend who was Snuffleupagus, and then he would be like, "I really just saw Snuffleupagus," and they're like, "Sure, Big Bird, like stop taking drugs, Big Bird." But then some kid got molested.
Hallucinating about Tartaria. What? Okay,
Well,
yeah.
then some big kid was molested, right? There's some real life person was molested, and then they said, "Oh man, like kids have been saying that they've been molested and that no one's going to believe them because of Big Bird." Because he's telling kids are seeing Big Bird go and not be able. He's like, he meets Big Bird, sees Snuffleupagus. He goes and he tells his friends who Snuffleupagus is. They don't believe Snuffleupagus exists. This goes on for a couple years, and it becomes a normalization that no one believes the kid when he tells on his Snuffleupagus. So then they have this whole episode where they rush out and they're chasing after Big Bird, and then he finally meets Snuffleupagus, and he's this like furry homeless methadone addict. And that's the other thing. All of the characters in Sesame Street were like homeless crackheads, basically, right? Oscar the Grouch, he started out as brown, and that was too racist, so they made him green. I mean, there's all of these weird little problems that the Sesame Street characters had. I think also the Cookie Monster started out as brown too, but blue is a much better choice. But they've before made the connections to Bert and Ernie. I don't really think that they're necessarily gay, but they definitely went through phases where the puppeteers insinuated things, right? Because it's a TV show for kids that aired every day. So I don't know. Sesame Street also it was just too hardcore for so many people, because they're for people living in the city who are being molested, dealing with drug addicts, dealing with homelessness. I mean, cities are a lot more intense. Urban zones, the kids are dealing with more. And so they had to build something that was more like Fraggle Rock, right?
Okay, so I mean, everyone knows about surveys. I'm just reading one sentence from Wikipedia. It says Sesame Street was by then the 15th highest rated children's television show in the US. A 1996 survey found that 95% of all American preschoolers had watched it by the time they were 3. I mean, I don't even know if it's technically possible to have something like that has such a reach that is not part of MK Ultra, to put it, bluntly.
That is exactly, yeah. And so it was public television. I wish I could find the article. There we go. Okay, so first couple of things. Again, Jim Henson was Tavistock, and the Muppets. So we're talking about Sesame Street. The Muppets are different than Sesame Street. The Muppets are done in Britain by Tavistock and were produced in Britain, right? So this is like the important. I'm going to get Joe Trepish to talk a bit about how this happened. That'd be interesting. But the British government made the Muppets, right? And then the Sesame Street's made by viewers like you, right? So it's made by really rich families on public broadcasting and viewers like you. The public, I don't know if you've ever seen like a PBS channel thing, but that's what it says at the beginning.
Always this blatant astroturfing, never gets old.
Right. So they forced syndication of the show through tax money. And once the show is out, then Jim Henson said, it's not enough. I need to do something more. And so after Sesame Street, which is 1969, I think it's in the 70s, he starts Sex and Violence. Jim Henson, Sex and Violence.
Sex and Violence is a KRS-One album or track.
Well, the original name for the Muppets was Sex and Violence. He's like, we can't just have Sesame Street anymore. Open Sesame. By the way, if you start getting into the monarch programming of Sesame Street, and this number means this, and CIA agents were using Star Trek and Sesame to have numbers that meant certain things. But on 1975's first episode of Saturday Night Live, you have Andy Kaufman, and you have George Carlin, and you have Sex and Violence, the first Muppet show that people get to see. And he's thinking, people will be like, Sex and Violence, what's that? I want to see that, or I hate that, or it'll make people respond. And it's brilliant. But then they say, no, we're not going to do that. So we're going to have monster puppets. So he ends up with the Muppets. And so the Muppets happens, and he's doing it out of Britain. And eventually hold on. What's the point of the Muppet thing? Oh, he says, I have a plan to end all war. That was his whole plan with a new show. He's like, after the Muppets and Sesame Street, I'm going to make Fraggle Rock and it will end war. And they're like, how are you going to do that? Well, we already control the world. You know, we have this show on every country. We have a different version of Sesame Street. People are watching Muppets. It's hit adults and children. The next thing to do is to target the remaining people, and specifically Cold War countries' children, raise them for a generation, and in 10 years or 20 years, when they're all grown up, there won't be war anymore because these kids will be raised on this programming. I mean, this is literally the plan Jim Henson had, and he explained it very well, and then he eventually got the money to do it. Not just a little bit of money. He got enough money to film it like 4 times. So you got the puppet part, but then you'd also have this dog meeting a man, and that man, you have a Canadian recording, you have a British.
I'm not completely messing this up. I believe that some variant of hippies or subset are even referred to as Fraggles, I believe, literally.
Really?
That would make perfect sense.
I mean, you remove the R or something. I don't. It just seems kind of weird, like the title Fraggle. But I've always liked it. I like the show. It's got. They reminded me of UCSC, University of California, Santa Cruz, hippie dippy students that I grew up around. But that's all part of the plan, also, right? Yeah. Like it doesn't. You have people that are like, I really am that kind of person. I fit. This is the office for Santa Cruz Muppet people. You know? So it really does. It romanticizes a way of being. But he said, okay, I'm going to make this show. I'm going to have 4 or 5 different versions. We'll have a German old man. We'll have a Russian old man. We'll have an Italian old man. We'll have a British old man. We'll have an American or Canadian-ish old man. And so that scene we'll shoot several times. The rest of it, we'll dub the puppets. So we'll have the American puppet. So basically, the show is a little different, but in the difference is that it's the same for everybody because you get the same experience. You're sacrificing the old man that the Americans are getting so that you get the same experience the American kids have when they watch it. And so because of that, everyone says, oh, you saw Fraggle Rock? I saw Fraggle Rock. I can't believe we all saw Fraggle Rock. Are we really all that different? And that's just the beginning. Because then you've got all the levels of what Fraggle Rock's about. You've got workers whose dharma is to work, and dozers, right, versus the Fraggles. That's kind of the thing. They work all day while Fraggles play all day because it's their dharma to play all day, while the workers work all day. And then there's a whole world of these leaders who think that they run the world, but they really don't. They just live in this larger area. But these guys live underground, but they think that they're very important. And that's their dharma, to think that they're very important. And it's a perfect show because it gets everyone believing that we're all equal. We're all different. We don't have a better or worse. We just have different places that we fit into society.
Determined by the crown, or...
I mean, basically, and that's the question I always wonder about Jim Henson. Like, how British was he? Because he was from Tennessee, I think he was, or was he from Mississippi? One, Jim. He's from Tennessee, might have been Mississippi. But he's from some American state, but he's, from a state that was loyal in the Confederacy to Britain. Jim Henson, Mississippi. Yeah, born in Mississippi. So, I mean, it's just such an interesting guy and such a psychedelic character, but he wasn't really psychedelic, And then he's got these weird, also the Fraggle episode, Secret Society of the Poobahs, right? So there's an episode of the Fraggle Rock where everybody finds out, everyone has these secret Society of the Poobahs dance, except for a couple of the people that aren't members yet. And so then they welcome in one of the persons into the membership of the Secret Society of the Poobahs, and they have to keep it a secret. And it's all about their kind of secret society and their Freemasonry and the clubs. So, I mean, everything there, they really try to show you that they're into keeping secrets, but how great it is and how fun it is and why you'd want to be a member of the club to do it. You're 3 years old, You want to be a member of the Secret Society of the Poobahs.
Because that sticks and you don't even properly remember. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like Poobah. NEUROPA. Like it's like the greatest song is the other thing. So I don't know. Jim Henson's definitely part of some plan, but at the end of the day, didn't it work? Kind of. They really did get most people to think we're all the same. There was a generation there. They don't do that anymore, right? Most people don't think they're all the same anymore. This happened for like a brief point. They're like, everyone, we're all
the
the same.
thing to ask, but how would you define that? Not the same, like political divides, skin
Borderless.
color divides, or
Robert Anton Wilson, borders. Come on, work. Spelling this wrong. Borders.
it almost seems like, they took away the World Trade Federation we had, shattered it. They still knew everyone has this yearning and basic understanding that there is some type of equality and commonality within humanity.
Borders between the real and the unreal is
the UN leadership or something like that with sustainable development goals. Then you can be together again, but only then. Otherwise, we got to keep the artificial separation.
the border in no, that was better over there. The border between the real and the unreal is not fixed, but just marks in the last place between where two rival gangs of shamans fought each other to a standstill.
Yeah,
that is the border between the real and the unreal. And I think we use that for where we design our borders in reality as well. That documentary, Robert Anton Wilson's Borders, talks a lot about this idea of in the 90s and into the early 2000s, the belief that there were no borders between anything, and that we were just psychologically creating borders in our minds. And this is actually pretty successfully used to convince people that we should all work together, that we were all unified. And this was great at a time when the sides were questioning whether they had any willingness to fight anymore.
You muted yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, everywhere I look, I think that they're trying to remove this system that they installed in the 90s. That they told us that we were all borderless, and now they're saying, hey, but we are very different again, right? This is the time when they're putting the borders back into our minds.
Well, that's for sure. Even just with building that wall and whatever else definitely has brought, or the Ukraine crisis definitely has brought the topic back to the forefront, I guess. So
Also you found this is the album Sex and Violence from
KRS-One. Yeah, I was just surprised because I thought, like, interesting that that's the first one, and I guess it's their first album too or something like that, and I was like, already strange reference. And KRS-One, I generally like his rap style and the lyrics and so on, but you still never know, control the position, whatever.
Yeah, I really want to believe in KRS-One, actually.
I also wanna, but like I haven't met him yet. I'd ask him, I'd be like, yo,
True.
Dude, what's up?
Well, he did say that hip hop is a nation or something like that. I had a friend who was really excited about KRS-One. I don't know, Professor Griff, KRS-One, some of these more conscious hip hoppers. I'm for it. I don't know. It's been a while since I've listened to KRS-One though, so I could be off on that. Fraggle Rock, though, I'm not off on. That is definitely Cold War propaganda. The United Nations.
So all I have left is one extra question and then one hint. So extra question is, are pigs altered humans? This actually comes up in some of Miyazaki Hayao, the most famous Studio Ghibli guy. Of course, now I don't know which movie is from the top of my head, but it occurs in one of them at least.
Spirited Away.
Yeah. And because also, as we know, the most compatible, I guess, organs for humans next to humans are actually pigs. And of course, that's a obvious red flag, I would say. And of course, the big question, why is there a prohibition against eating pig meat in the Quran? Yeah. These are the only hints I have.
I mean, I'm pretty convinced that the pig thing. So, as a kid, you've heard my pig story, right? The idea that there were when I went to the county fair and the Santa Cruz County Fair pig race. And I saw these pigs racing around in Santa Cruz, and I was like, "Hey, this is pretty nuts. Like, how could they take pigs and force them to race each other? This this is like maddening. And every one of them we were supposed to write this story a page long. So I come back to school with like a 20-page thing that was like, long ago, we were all pigs. You know, we think we're evolved from gorillas, but no, it's crazy. That's nonsense. Everybody should know that that's nonsense, and it's pretty silly. But pigs, we actually came from. But pigs look different back then. They look more like us, a little different, but they have hyper evolved, brilliant, you know, different than the pigs.
Oh,
of
so
the day.
the pigs, of course, because the pigs searched the truffle and they ate plenty of the right ones.
Oh, there you go. Pig
and then
truffle.
they started standing up or something.
I like that. I could go with that. But you have these like space pigs that were brilliant. You know, they're like the mushroom. Yeah, I can go with the mushroom thing. That makes the most sense. I'm glad you added that. I didn't have that as a kid, that they were the truffle pigs, but that's now part of the story. Thank you, Raph. So anyway, these pigs, they evolve. They're too brilliant for themselves and their environment. They destroy their environment and they have to leave the earth. And when they leave the earth, oh, thanks, Britt. But I forgot. I actually left it. My bad. They left the earth and then they ended up actually having. Okay, let me try that again. The pigs have destroyed their environment because of pollution and technology that have made the world better for themselves, but also destroyed their environment. So they have to leave the earth. Some of the pigs stay on the earth, but they have to go underground and they have to hide from the solar radiation, or the ozone's gone. And the other pigs, they're floating in space, or they're going off doing their own thing. Again, this is a story I had as a kid, so I don't know about the space part. But then eventually they come back and they find what has happened to the pigs on Earth, and how the pigs have been turned into slaves and being eaten, and how they're racing these pigs around all over the place. You know, like, and this is the Santa Cruz pig race that they fly to. They happen to show up right at that moment, so it's the worst time to arrive, and they're saying this is horrible. So then they levitate this pig off of the track so that he can just be part of the group. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. You know,
it sounds like a bestseller. I think it's very imaginative. But yeah, also, who knows, you know, especially during these times, I think we may easily be receptive to some information that may be more true than we, you know, are told to believe. So who knows? Yeah. But the main thing, again, just being that they are the most compatible to humans. I mean, what is this? Why? You know, this is the main thing where I'm like kind of tripping, that even modern science apparently is using pig hearts and stuff like that, right? Because that's what humans can deal with best.
Right, Dr. House is using pig dialysis often. They kill a pig to have its kidneys process your blood, right? Have your blood flushed through the pig. I mean, there are a lot of connections to pigs, but I think also that might be because so many people have, like, same with cows and pigs. People eat a lot of cow or pig, then it ends up having DNA, probably the same way that if you eat eagles, maybe you get the eagle eye, right? This is the Native American
but
thing.
I'm not sure if we would have eaten them for that long a time that this would already have occurred in that amount, especially in that amount, you know. Still would have eaten mostly plants, I guess. I mean, maybe some meat, sure, but mostly meat. I don't. But that's only my assumptions, and I don't believe in the mammoth slaying cavemen.
It's a good question. I mean, if everything's created, also, we're not supposed to have, you know, anything that has these cloven hooves, right? Like, you're not, like, the pigs are the dirtiest animal you're not supposed to eat, according to the Muslims and the Jews. So if that's the case, why are they so dirty if they're so similar to us? What makes them dirty? I don't know. Oh, there's some stuff that we should probably save for next time, just because you did so much work and I really want to celebrate it.
Oh, sure.
I don't know. We should go to your page and we should look at it. Act like you know 26.
Other ask. Yeah, so the most recent interview with David is really cool. About Attila. I'm sure next time he'll tell you about it too. There will be more, because I just spoke with him just now. So it's, you know, I want to say insanity, you know, but understanding, let's say, the journey continues, and it's levels of levels. And yeah, the
I'm
other thing
actually
we
going to
did,
record with him later, so I was thinking actually maybe I'll
great.
throw you in there if you want to get involved, just to help me like sit there.
My brain is already fried, but definitely invite him if in any way we can manage. I'm
We'll do
totally
it
up for
again.
it.
Do it again, yeah.
But maybe just let me know. Maybe I'll listen in. And the other thing, of course, the big thing, which I'll come back with Martin as well, so we can talk about it more, is your conversation with David, the Skull and Bones one. So this is the video in the middle.
Yeah, this is
Yes.
cool. So, so Martin and you, did Martin translate this, or did you? Let me see here.
Yeah, in this case, I actually translated it, taking
This is
from the
amazing. I can't even
take,
believe
taking
this.
it from the Google Translate version, but you have to go through it manually that it makes sense, do minor audio editing. Then, because it wasn't so accurate, I only had to do minor video editing, so that was cool.
Oh,
And
it's
yeah,
so good.
I spoke David, and Martin spoke you, just because of workload, efficiency. Yeah, it was pretty fun, and it turned out pretty well, I think. And feedback I got so far was good, that it's like enticing and interesting, because there's so many crazy things in there and so many document proofs as well. I put in a few more pictures in the right spots.
Aberglauben
So
zugunsten der Mathematik beseitigt und gesagt: Hier sind Diagramme. Es ist nur einfache Mathematik. Man muss nicht abergläubisch sein, man kann es sich ansehen. Sie haben die
That's pretty amazing. Oh man, that's so good. I mean, like, so this. Wait, I've got my echo on. Sorry, 1 second. This is crazy because now, I mean, the way you did it, it really kind of it's better even than before. It reminds me of Asterisks or some Asterix, the cartoon now. Like it's a good voice. So guys, you're gonna want to watch this, even if you don't speak German. I'm pretty sure you're still gonna want to watch this. It actually just sounds.
well, especially if you know anybody interested in these things that speaks German, because what we're really trying to do here is build the bridge properly, because still
Right.
many people that speak German aren't so good with English, or it's difficult for them and so on.
Yeah.
So we both want to have the things more translated, and also have more communication between different researchers, of course.
Guys, if you know any Jehovah's
commentators and
Witnesses,
everything.
hand them copies of this stuff when they come to your homes. You know what I mean? Tell them to go, like, have you heard of this? Did you know that Jehovah's Witnesses were really talking about Tartaria? See what they say.
Because the real kicker in here, I looked it up now a bit with the whole Kufic Arabic script, and the way it's shown, I guess the so-called propeller is probably actually an ornamental version of it, where you have 4 times Maha Emet, like
Right.
that's probably just a common arrangement. But then, of course, I mean, if you tell any Germans, like, this may be where this most famous flag came from, of course, reversed, because I believe I actually have checked it now, that
Here it is right here. This is Muhammad
Yeah.
and Ali 4 times, right? So Muhammad,
Exactly.
Ali.
And I believe I even checked it. This was interesting. I'm just going top of my head now, but that in the Nazi flag, this is actually reversed in the other direction. And I
Mhm.
also checked, just because I'm into this Schauberger stuff and vortexes, there is one particular company that creates mixers, like Smoothie, like Vitamix or Blender, right?
Mhm.
That are actually, I believe they are turning to the right. And there is this whole, of course, esoteric science and question whether it's actually important if your blade turns left or right. But when I was looking for it, I was super into it. So I was checking which one turns differently, or what can I learn more about
Some
it.
people, yeah, they think it makes it sweet or sour. There's like a whole like
Yes, there's a whole idea. I cannot, completely verify it, but I had to get that one. And then I checked, and it really seems as if the so-called Wheel of the Sun, or all the Buddhist Eastern depictions, which may also just be originally Arabic, Kufic Arabic slang versions, but they all turn to the right, I believe, and the one in the Nazi flag turns on the left. So that was just, I found interesting, that also all the mixers worldwide turn to the left, only this particular company turns to the right, because I'm like, why isn't it 50-50? Why isn't it random or something? Why do all others have to turn to the left? It's just strange. I don't know. Maybe there's a scientific explanation, but I kind of doubt it. At least,
I'm sure there's got to be like some
science.
superstitions, man. Scientists are always they're superstitious. People don't believe it. But every scientist I know is, even if they think they're not. They're like, I mean, even if they don't cross a black cat's path, they still wear a mask. Something like that. Scientists are superstitious. You know what I'm saying? Oh, okay, wait, but act like you know. Oops. Act like you know, guys. Make sure you go to Act Like You Know and subscribe. Make sure you're watching these videos. Share these with your family. Get these to the Amish. You can get this out there. You can help people. So we appreciate that. And also you can go to tartarynova.com. You can join the Discord. And in the Discord, you can talk to Raph directly, and you can also find other. Anytime he posts a video, it goes to the links as well, so you can find them every time that they're posted. So, thank you very much for being here, Raph. If you're awake, you're welcome to Wednesday Ultra later, and but if you're
when
tired,
you're gonna record with David first, or even after?
After.
Okay, yes, yeah. No, I'll leave it. But with that, we're gonna manage somehow to get together in some way, shape, or form. We're gonna manage somehow.
Yeah, dude, we're gonna make it after all. All right, love you, bro.
Thanks, everyone.
Peace, guys and gals and everything in between.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarian. Recent Tartarian. Recent Tartarian.
Hey, everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.